Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 779. One Shot. The three types of paper in Lamino's travels clearly had different textures. The white paper that could only record sequence 7, 8, and 9 powers was thin, smooth, and flat. The yellowish-brown goatskin which could record sequence 5 and 6 powers were very pliable like tanned leather. The three charred yellow pages that could record godhood powers were thick and textured. Together, they allowed someone to quickly distinguish between them simply from touch. Klein's fingers quickly found the thick and textured 3 pages as he gently pinched the middle page. Although his pocket wasn't large enough, preventing him from fully opening Lamino's travels, the hooded robe was personally modified by Furs herself. The pocket had plenty of space, allowing the palm-sized spellbook to be flipped to a right angle. As Klein used his palm to prevent Lamino's travels from closing, he used his finger to slide across the corresponding page's surface. The surface had slight bumps and depressions, making the strange patterns and symbols that were filled with mystery and ancient vibes be directly presented in his mind. He injected his spirituality into it. This charred yellow page recorded a demigod power of the storm pathway, hurricane. Klein wanted to use it to create chaos, so as to interfere with the Aurora Order Saint who was lurking in the darkness. By doing so, he could seize the opportunity to assassinate Mr. X and escape with the help of the wind. Aside from this goal, the chaos could also effectively hide his tracks. By letting the members of the gathering scatter, and with everyone's identity being a mystery, doing so made everyone be a suspect. The Aurora Order would then find it difficult to pinpoint Zio. As his thoughts whirred, Klein locked his gaze onto a spot, and he slowly pulled out Lamino's travels. Meanwhile, Mr. X took 2 steps to Klein's side, standing near him like he was a friend he hadn't seen in years. Following that, there was a loud buzz as a terrifying hurricane spiraled out of control in front of everybody. It was where Klein had targeted his spirituality at. The tables, coffee tables, sofa, and high-backed chairs in the room flew up as the violent hurricane ripped through the walls, carrying the roof away as it headed for the alley. Some of the gathering's participants were in the way of the hurricane and were thrown far away, while others fell forward due to the wind pressure as they ran in another direction. If Klein hadn't purposely controlled the timing and direction of the hurricane, not only would Mr. X's old house be destroyed, but even the series of condominiums around it would suffer damage. As for the gathering participants, they would have been swept up in the hurricane, having their survival depend solely on luck. The buzzing sounds quickly intensified as the hurricane that reached into the sky was like a terrifying giant. It stomped across the alley towards the street, leaving nothing behind in its wake. Klein was similarly swept up as he and the possessed Mr. X were thrown onto another street. During this process, as both of them were standing close to one another, along with how a wraith could float, these could control the target's body to a certain extent even with the hurricane. Therefore, the distance between Klein and Mr. X ultimately stayed within 5 meters. His control of the spirit body threads had never been terminated. In midair, with the howling winds in his ear, Klein suddenly yanked at his chest with his right hand, tearing away the hooded robe's surface, reached under his arm, and drew death knell. Although in Mr. X's current state where just air bullets alone could finish him off, Klein decided to be cautious. He was afraid that certain mystical items on his body would suddenly be triggered, just like Admiral of Blood Senor's necklace. When hunting, it was necessary to do his best. Klein's vigorous action of drawing his revolver had obviously affected his control of the spirit body threads. If it wasn't because Mr. X was on the brink of being fully controlled, just this alone was enough to recover his usual lucidness. However, even so, Mr. X's thoughts were no longer impeded as his mind sped up. He attempted to resist, but with Wraith Seniors possessing him, it had forced his efforts to be in vain for a brief moment. Then, Mr. X's eyes reflected an enemy who swooped downward. It was a thin face with pronounced facial lines. In his vision, the person coldly cocked the revolver, pointing the black barrel at him. Bang! Klein didn't hesitate to pull the trigger as the gunshot was drowned by the howling winds. Mr. X's head jerked backwards as though an invisible hand had pressed onto it. His head and brass mask shattered into pieces, splattering red and white liquids everywhere. It was a lethal shot. Death knell had sounded the knell for him. Plop! After the shot, Klein fell to the ground on his back. With a thud, Mr. X landed beside him as the blood and fragments that scattered in midair had strangely flowed back, gathering by his neck and forming a head filled with cracks and crevices. This was the ability of a wraith. At that moment, the hurricane was starting to disperse, and the huge commotion had undoubtedly caught the notice of faraway demigods. Inside the Holy Wind Cathedral, the new Backland Archbishop, deep blue efficient Randall Valentinus, instantly flew out of his room as he floated in the air. Klein, who had fallen on the ground, noticed that the wind pressure had weakened. With Death Knell in one hand and Lamino's Travels in the other, he flipped the latter to the first yellowish-brown goatskin page. After obtaining this spell book, he realized that there were a few pages recorded in it, with one of them being Traveler's Door. Klein originally imagined that it was a coincidence, but on careful thought, he found it inevitable. This was because Lamino's Travels belonged to the ancient Abraham family. They wielded the apprentice pathway and several corresponding mystical items, so they had the resources to easily record a traveler's powers. After all, this was something very, very useful. At that moment, as long as the Traveler's Door was formed, Klein could leave unharmed with Mr. X's corpse that was being possessed by Wraith Senior. He hadn't used it in the building, because it was possible that the Aurora Order Saint might intercept it. Furthermore, Mr. X was also a traveler. He had a chance of successfully escaping via Traveler's Door. Therefore, Klein didn't dare risk it before he was completely dead. At that moment, Klein's vision went black as he realized that the surrounding streets were filled with a pitch-black and strange liquid. They surged over and quickly coagulated to form a strong cage. In such darkness, shadows began to come alive as cold gazes landed on him. A demigod's power! The Aurora Order does have a saint nearby. There's no way to directly teleport away. Klein's heart tensed up as he calmly flipped Lamino's Travels to the charred yellow page. Sizzle! A silver python snaked out of thin air, embroiling itself with the darkness as it illuminated everything. Lightning storm! The coagulated pitch blackness shattered instantly. And without any hesitation, Klein stuffed his death knell-wielding right hand into his pocket, pinching the dark green stone that was filled with burn marks. Door! He chanted in ancient Hermes with an abnormally calm tone. A light blue brilliance burst out as Klein's figure rapidly turned into a blur. Even Mr. X's corpse, which had come close to grab onto his shoulder, had experienced similar changes. The two figures instantly turned invisible as they vanished from the spot. They quickly departed into the spirit world with overlapping saturated colors, pulling off an ingenious escape. In the shadowy alley with the flattened gathering building, which had planks, rubble, clothes, and all kinds of random items strewn all around, someone harumphed. Damn it! At this moment, the other gathering members had already fled the street. From far away in the sky, a sonic boom could be heard. Zio and Furs, who were searching for ghosts in East Borough, were alarmed by the sky that suddenly lit up. They hurriedly looked into the distance, and saw the silver forest that seemed to bloom like a forest. The twisted form and sense of horror had left them trembling despite the distance. They didn't even dare look straight at it. What happened over there? Zio mumbled as she exchanged looks with Furs blankly. Furs actually had a guess, but she found it difficult to believe. This was because it had far exceeded her expectations of the world Gehrman Sparrow's strength. In a dark alley, Klein appeared out of thin air with Mr. X's corpse as they landed on the ground. He wasn't flustered at all. He kept Death Knell in his pocket, and then took out another book. Grozel's Travels. Smack! Klein smacked the book written by Dragon of Imagination Anquelt onto Mr. X's face, staining the cover with blood. Moments later, Mr. X's corpse vanished, leaving behind Wraith Senior in his dark red coat and old triangular hat. Right on the heels of that, Klein put away Grozel's Travels, flipped open Lamino's Travels, and made another charred yellow page face up. Suddenly, A bright light emitted from the book as an illusory angel with 12 wings flew up and landed on Klein. All of this happened in an instant before darkness returned to the alley. Only the dim moonlight continued illuminating the area silently. Klein immediately took out another metal bottle, poured out the blood stored inside, and uniformly smeared it across Lamino's travels. After doing all of this, he put away everything else, pulling away the hooded robe and throwing it beside him. A scarlet flame immediately soared up, burning the tattered robe clean. Meanwhile, Klein silently grew another 10 centimeters as he transformed into a relatively ordinary appearance. Then, he identified his bearings with the help of the stars, and he picked up a fallen branch to assist him as he quickly turned through the dark and deteriorated streets, returning back to the cheap motel. At this point, he still had no idea what additional weakness he had been given. Inside the single room in the motel, Klein changed into his own clothes, turning back into Gehrman Sparrow. Seeing this thin and cold-looking crazy adventurer in the mirror, he fell silent for a few seconds, picking up the half-top hat and wearing it. Above the flattened building, Church of Storms Cardinal, Backlund Diocese Archbishop, Deep Blue Officiant Randall Valentinus, who had failed in capturing anyone, looked down in silence for an extended period of time. 160 Beauclund Street. Upon seeing the visitor outside, Butler Walter asked in surprise, "Your Excellency, why are you suddenly here? Is there something?" Bishop Electra chuckled and said, "I heard that Dwayne is sick, so I'm here to visit him. Perhaps he will quickly recover under the goddess's blessings."